These raids cost the city a lot of money. I would imagine it's something like $30,000 every time they raided us. Each of these cops get double time because of when they're pulled to the raid, and they get hazard pay as well because of the potential of what might happen. City workers have to be there. Parks and Rec workers have to be there. So there's a lot of people involved, and there's a lot of money being poured out for nothing.
And that is a practice that came from the previous administration. I was elected just a year ago today, actually. Today is the anniversary of the election. The first thing we did, the mayor and I, before we were even sworn in, we asked for a meeting with the city manager, and we said, stop it. Stop. Stop raiding this camp. It's cruel, it's unnecessary, and it's political, and it almost feels personal.
This particular raid was on Fairmont and Adeline, and it was, I remember this date vividly. It was, the police showed up at about 4:30 in the morning on the 4th of November last year. And we started the protest several months earlier, or a couple months earlier, and this was maybe the 15th or 16th raid that we had. I couldn't tell you for sure. I'd have to look up at my record. The first time they were using force was this raid. Before this point, we were able to get all their gear, and then we would move to another place. And they hated that we were doing this. They'd raid us in another place, and we'd get all their gear, and they'd move us to another place. They couldn't deal with it. And so this time they started confiscating gear. They wouldn't let us get the stuff before they were confiscating it. Cops were pulling at tents because they weren't fast enough. They were trying to get Mike Sint, who founded First That Came for the Homeless, they were trying to get him out of the tent. He has severe lung and heart issues, and he can't move that fast. And several of the people at the encampment were disabled and not able to move that fast, and they were pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. There were 2 or 3 truckloads that went to the dump from this raid.
The first thing we did, the mayor and I, before we were even sworn in, we asked for a meeting with the city manager, and we said, stop it. Stop. Stop raiding this camp. It's cruel, it's unnecessary, and it's political, and it almost feels personal.
And then he grabbed my thumb, and he twisted my hand back, and I was on the ground. I couldn't even tell you how he did it. But I was on the ground, feet up in the air, stunned, thinking, what the hell is he doing? Why did he do this to me? I didn't do anything wrong. And then one of the campers came up behind me and was trying to help me up, really sweet guy. And then suddenly I see and feel him being dragged away, pulled away from me. And I've got 4 cops starting to drag me back towards where there's a paddy wagon. And I'm screaming for my cane. I could not walk without my cane. And they would not give it to me, and somebody, it may have been a rat, said, we can't give it to you, you'll use it as a weapon. And they knew, every single one of those cops knew I walked with the cane and needed a cane. And so they're dragging me, and then suddenly my feet are lifted up, and they're still like carrying me like a pig on a stick or something down to the paddy wagon. Nobody has said anything to me. They're just taking me away. And then this other woman who happened to be running for congresswoman, who's also on the lawsuit against the city, whose name I shan't mention because I don't have permission, she was dealing with police trying to calm things down. And she heard me screaming, and she saw what was happening, and she stood up and said, what the hell are you doing to her? Seconds later, she was on the ground, face down into the concrete, with 5 cops on top of her. And so we pass where she's down on the ground, and I'm flipping out seeing all this going on around me. I'd never been arrested. I did lots of protests in the 60s and 70s with the Vietnam War, and somehow I never got arrested. But here I am now, I'm facing the paddy wagon, and they're trying to push me up into it. And while they're trying to push me up, they're lifting my sweatshirt higher and higher until my breasts are exposed. So now I'm screaming for my cane, asking them to let me have some dignity and walk up into the van, and please pull my shirt down so they're not exposing me.
So, since that time, I will say it took a couple of weeks for city staff. I don't think that they expected Mayor Adegin to be the new mayor. And certainly I don't think they expected to have a brand new council that would have almost a 180-degree shift in our perspectives on how to address the homeless crisis. So you're going from working for a mayor and council who repeatedly tried to criminalize the homeless, who put ballot measures that were defeated to make it illegal to sit on the sidewalk, whose message was, those people just need to behave. As if being homeless was like a choice and a behavior issue. So you go literally from one day to the next, from a general tone of an administration that really sanctioned this idea that the homeless were bad people and that they needed a strong hand and that they were people who misbehave and they need to be kind of put in their place, to a mayor and council who recognize that this is a humanitarian crisis, that life on the streets is a struggle, who appreciate the activism and who believe it, right? Well, it takes a little while for that big ship to kind of completely turn about. I mean, a city it's a big administration, and it takes a while for change to happen. I think people have this idea that, boom, everything should change on a dime. Well, that's kind of a Trumpian idea of how the world works. The world doesn't really work like that. You got to work with people, collaborate, and it takes a little bit of time for a big administration to move from one set of policies under one administration to an entirely new one.